Let's start this bulletin now with some updates from the United States, where in yet another historic move, the US President Joe Biden has signed 4 executive orders. Biden's executive order now promotes the agenda of racial equity, which Biden said was marred especially during Trump's tenure and the COVID-19 pandemic. Listen in.
I believe this nation and this government need to change their whole approach to the issue of racial equity. Yes, we need criminal justice reform. But that isn't nearly enough. We need to open the promise of America to every American. And that means we need to make the issue of racial equity not just an issue for any one department of government. It has to be the business of the whole of government. I ran for president because I believe we're in a battle for the soul of this nation. And the simple truth is, our soul will be troubled as long as systemic racism is allowed to persist.
The president is using his authority to not only roll back his predecessor Donald Trump's policies, but also to discourage racism and xenophobia against the Asian Americans and other minority groups. He called for action against white supremacy and condemned bias against Asian Americans. Let's take a look at what the new executive orders hold. Biden firstly looks to scale down U.S. government's use of private prisons by not renewing contracts with the operators, keeping in mind that the incarceration rates have risen lately and inmates have been treated poorly time and again. Now, in order to bolster anti-discrimination enforcement in the housing policy, Biden has taken an important step in this direction. The newly announced fair housing policy will require the Department of Housing and Urban Development to study and counteract the racially discriminatory impact of previous policies. He also recommitted the federal government to respect tribal sovereignty. His fourth action combats xenophobia against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. An administrative official said that this move is mainly in reaction to Trump's dangerous and often offensive rhetoric. Biden said that closing the racial income and opportunity gaps will also help to boost the economy for all Americans. He added that all federal agencies and White House offices would be tasked with tackling inequality. The White House mentioned that Biden has ordered a comprehensive assessment on the threats of white nationalism from the intelligence community. For more on Biden's recent executive orders, WION's correspondent Jagriti Dave joins us for more from Washington, D.C. Hi, Jagriti. Now, another significant executive order from President Biden against bias on the basis of color. This gains special significance, especially after the global Black Lives Matter movement. So tell us more.
Yes, Joe Biden is pushing through with his promise to seek for racial equality in the United States. We've talked about this so much on this programme when we saw the protests that swept across many cities in the United States and indeed in cities across the world following the killing of George Floyd, a black man in Minneapolis. And so I think these orders are really Joe Biden showing that he has not forgotten the issue of race that he talked so much about, and especially because he owes, as he has said himself, he owes a lot to black voters in his elevation to the White House as president. So I think you're seeing not only support for ending policies that continue segregated housing, but also looking to the pandemic again front and centre as policies. His emphasis on ending discrimination against Asian Americans sort of fits into both his public health agenda as well as his equality agenda.
Right. Now, Jagriti, how exactly will this order be implemented and what will it mean for communities of people of colour? I
think it's that's all going to be fleshed out. I think at this stage you're seeing things as we've discussed, such as an attempt to overturn issues such as enforcing, calling on the Department of Housing and Urban Development to enforce laws that are already in place, like the Fair Housing Act, to target discrimination in home buying, for example. Those are the sorts of plans that we're going to see. We're also seeing the overturning of the Trump administration ban on diversity training in federal agencies. So I think what he's trying to say is that it starts with policies from within government as much as it does overarching policies to try to end discrimination. But of course, it's a challenge. Many presidents before Joe Biden have talked about ending racial inequality. So it obviously clearly hasn't happened yet. And so it will be a matter of, looking at data to see actually the impact of his policies. Do they have an actual tangible impact on the lives of people of colour in the United States?
Right. Jagrati, my final question. In other news, reports suggest that President Biden also called on the Russian President, Vladimir Putin, of course, to discuss various issues. Can you give us some details about the same?
Yes, so his conversation with Vladimir Putin, based on the readout of the call, says that Joe Biden, talked to him about the status of opposition leader Alexei Navalny, the issue of the alleged bounties on US troops in Afghanistan. I think a lot of people who have looked at this, who compare it to President Trump's positioning with Russia, many people have said that this is an example of the US taking a tough stance against Russia, making clear that Russia is not going to be able to get away with bad behaviour, as many people see it. Others, however, also say that have criticised President Trump for having a sort of a cosy personal relationship with Vladimir Putin when he was in office. However, many also have noted that in terms of actual concrete policies, there was still quite a hawkish stance towards Russia, and actually tough actions in terms of sanctions, etc., against Russia, despite the apparent coziness between the two leaders on a personal level. So I think there's a general expectation that the United States under Joe Biden is going to be more assertive when it comes to Russia.
Right, absolutely. All right, Jagrati, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us on this broadcast. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.